Welcome to Future Epoch, where we learn more about our world. In 1997, the global mining industry was riding the back of what appeared to be the greatest gold discovery in human history. Deep in the jungles of Borneo, a small Canadian company named Bre-X Minerals had staked a claim that geologists were calling the find of the century, a gold deposit so vast it would have rewritten the economics of precious metals markets worldwide. Investors flooded in. Pension funds committed. Governments competed for a share. At its peak, Bre-X was worth more than $6 billion Canadian on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Then, in a single month, it was all gone. Gold has always attracted believers. Throughout the 20th century, mining speculation drew ordinary investors as much as seasoned professionals, each hoping that the next big discovery would be their lottery ticket. Canada, with its resource-rich geology and established mining culture, became one of the world's most active hubs for junior mining companies, small, often undercapitalized firms that raised money on the promise of what might lie beneath the earth. Most of these companies never found anything. A few found something modest. And occasionally, one found something real. The Toronto Stock Exchange and the Vancouver Stock Exchange listed hundreds of these junior miners at any given time, each one a small bet on geological fortune. Bre-X Minerals was supposed to be the one that actually hit. David Walsh founded Bre-X in Calgary, Alberta in 1989. Walsh was not a geologist. He was a former stockbroker and securities dealer who had declared personal bankruptcy in 1993. When he heard about a potential gold-bearing site in the Busang region of East Kalimantan, in Indonesian Borneo, he scraped together funding and dispatched a team to investigate. His chief field geologist was John Felderhoff, a veteran explorer who had spent decades working in Papua New Guinea and Southeast Asia. Running the day-to-day sampling operations on the ground in Indonesia was a Filipino geologist named Michael de Guzman. In 1993, Felderhoff and de Guzman began sending back extraordinary reports. The core samples they extracted from the Busang site appeared to show gold mineralization on a scale that staggered the industry. Early estimates suggested tens of millions of ounces. Later claims pushed the figure towards 70 million ounces, and at times some projections went even higher. For context, a major gold discovery is typically measured in the single millions of ounces. 70 million ounces would have made Busang the largest gold deposit ever found. The stock responded accordingly. In 1993, Bre-X shares traded for pennies. By 1996, they had climbed past $20. By early 1997, they were trading above $25 on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and the company's market capitalization had surpassed $6 billion Canadian. Mutual funds, pension funds, and individual investors poured money in. The Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan acquired a significant stake. Retail investors across Canada saw Bre-X as the opportunity of a generation. The Indonesian government watched closely. The Busang site sat in territory where mining rights were politically complicated, and President Suharto's regime was known for inserting family and allies into lucrative resource deals. Competing interests jostled for position, including Barrick Gold and Freeport-McMoRan, two major mining companies who saw what appeared to be a once-in-a-century deposit and wanted access to it. Then, on the 19th of March 1997, Michael de Guzman fell from a helicopter over the Borneo jungle. He was on his way to meet representatives from Freeport-McMoRan, who were conducting their own due diligence on the Busang deposit. His death was ruled a suicide. His body, which showed signs of severe physical deterioration reportedly consistent with hepatitis B, was recovered days later in difficult jungle terrain. The circumstances remained murky and would continue to fuel speculation for years. What followed de Guzman's death shook the mining world to its foundations. Freeport-McMoRan's due diligence team had been drilling their own confirmation holes at Busang. Their preliminary findings showed almost no gold. Alarmed, Bre-X commissioned an independent audit from the firm Strathcona Mineral Services. Their report, released in May 1997, was unambiguous and devastating. The Busang samples had been salted. Someone, over an extended period, had been taking core samples from the drill sites, shaving gold from jewelry and mixing in alluvial gold, river gold, and adding this material to the samples before they were lobbed and shipped for assay. There was no major gold deposit at Busang. There may have been almost no gold at all. The mechanism of the fraud, though simple in concept, had been sustained across hundreds of samples over several years. The salted material was sophisticated enough to pass initial scrutiny, mixing alluvial gold with crushed core so that assay results appeared consistent and credible. The scale required either a systematic operation or individuals with both direct access and significant geological knowledge. To this day, no one has been conclusively convicted of the core salting. De Guzman, who had direct day-to-day access to the samples and the physical opportunity to conduct or oversee the fraud, died before any investigation could question him. Felderhoff, who as chief geologist bore responsibility for the integrity of the data, was acquitted of insider trading charges by a Canadian court in 2007 after a legal process that stretched over a decade. He maintained his innocence throughout. Walsh died of a brain aneurysm in the Bahamas in 1998, before facing any charges related to the fraud itself. The financial consequences were immediate and catastrophic. Bre-X shares fell from above $25 to effectively zero in a matter of weeks. An estimated 6 billion Canadian dollars in market value evaporated. Thousands of ordinary investors lost their savings, retirement funds, and money they had earmarked for their children's futures. Institutional investors who had committed large sums faced serious questions about their due diligence processes. The Ontario Securities Commission launched an extensive investigation, and the scandal prompted direct regulatory reform in how mining companies were required to disclose and verify resource estimates. In Canada, Bre-X directly contributed to the introduction of National Instrument 43-101, a regulation that established strict standards for how mineral resource estimates must be reported and what qualifications a reporting geologist must hold. The intent was to make another Bre-X structurally much harder to pull off, to ensure that independent, qualified verifications sat between a company's internal claims and what reached investors. Beyond the immediate losses, Bre-X damaged trust in the entire junior mining sector for years. Investors became more cautious, due diligence became more stringent, and the story entered the business curriculum as a case study in how herd psychology, conflicts of interest, and inadequate verification processes can combine to produce disasters of extraordinary scale. The lesson most commonly drawn from Bre-X is about due diligence, the simple, unglamorous discipline of verifying what you are told before committing money to it. But there is a deeper lesson about human psychology. Bre-X succeeded as a fraud in part because people wanted it to be real. The gold rush mentality that drives junior mining speculation is not unique to Canada or to the 1990s. The desire to believe in a discovery, to be early, to get in before the crowd. These impulses are durable features of markets and of human nature. The analysts who questioned the Busang data existed. Warning signs were raised. But in a rising market, skepticism is an uncomfortable position. Those who sold early were criticized for missing out. Those who stayed were destroyed when the fraud unraveled. Regulators and investors both learned from this. But the underlying psychology, the willingness to set aside doubt when the numbers are exciting, remains a permanent feature of financial markets. The jungle at Busang is quiet now. The equipment is gone. The company that staked a claim on those hills no longer exists. The men who built the fraud are dead or acquitted. And the gold, the 70 million ounces that moved billions of dollars of capital and altered the retirement plans of thousands of ordinary people, was never there. What remains is a question that every subsequent financial scandal asks in a slightly different form. At what point does a belief become so comfortable, so widely shared, and so financially convenient that the institutions designed to question it simply stop doing their job? Bre-X was not just a story about fraud. It was a story about what happens when an entire industry, and the investors who trusted it, collectively decided that the most important question, "Is this actually real?" was one that could wait until later. Sometimes, later never comes. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this content and want to see more, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel.